Most people think their stress comes from what they lack. You tell yourself you'd be fine if you just had a little more money, a little more recognition, a little more certainty, a little more love. But the truth nobody wants to say out loud is this: your stress doesn't come from what you lack. It comes from what you want. Everything you want is taxing your peace. Every desire you carry is a line item on an invoice you're going to pay whether you know it or not. And right now, you're paying for things you don't even remember ordering. Here's the mistake most people make. They think desire is the engine of a good life. They think wanting things is what gets you out of bed, what makes you build, what makes you strive. And they're not entirely wrong. But they never ask the follow-up question. What does this wanting cost me? Not in money, not in time, in peace, in serenity, in that quiet, unshakable feeling that you are okay regardless of what happens around you. Because here's what nobody tells you. Every time you want something you can't control, you hand your peace to that thing. You give it collateral. And if that thing doesn't deliver, your peace gets seized. So let me give you the one idea this whole video is built on. Everything you want is taxing your peace. And until you become a cost analyst of your own serenity, you will pay for every desire with a piece of yourself you can't get back. Now sit with that for a second, because I know it sounds harsh. It sounds like I'm telling you to stop caring about things, to stop wanting, to become numb. That's not what this is. What I'm telling you is far more precise and far more difficult than simply not caring. I'm telling you to look at every single thing you want and ask one question. What does this cost me in serenity? And if the price is too high, you cut it. Not because you're weak, because you finally understand the value of what you'd be losing. Let me take you back about 2,000 years. There was a man named Epictetus. He was born a slave. His leg was damaged, possibly broken by a master, and he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. He had nothing, no wealth, no status, no freedom, literally, for the first part of his life. And yet, this man became one of the most influential teachers of inner freedom who ever lived. He would stand in front of his students and tell them something that sounded almost insane. He said, "The surest path to misery is desiring things outside your control. And the surest path to tranquility is desiring only your own virtue, your own excellence of character, because no one can take that from you." Now think about that. A man who owned nothing, who had been physically broken, who had every reason to want a different life, was telling people that the secret to peace wasn't getting more. It was wanting less of what you can't guarantee. Not less in the sense of settling. Less in the sense of being surgical about what you allow to matter. Epictetus had a framework. He divided everything in existence into two categories: things within your power and things not within your power. Within your power, he said, are your opinions, your intentions, your desires, your aversions, your inner mental life. Not within your power are your body, your property, your reputation, your status, the opinions other people hold of you, and everything external. And here's the core of it. By attaching only to what is within your power, you become free. By attaching to what is not within your power, you become a slave. That word, slave, Epictetus didn't use it lightly. He knew what slavery was. He lived it. And he was saying that you, sitting there with your phone and your notifications and your ambitions and your 5-year plan, can be just as much a slave as he was. Not to a person, to a desire, to an outcome you can't control, to a version of the future you've fallen in love with and refuse to let go of. Think about your own life right now. What are you carrying that you didn't consciously agree to carry? What desire have you been feeding for months or years that is quietly draining your peace? Maybe it's a career milestone. Maybe it's a person's approval. Maybe it's a certain income number. Maybe it's the idea that your life should look a certain way by a certain age. You keep telling yourself that once you get it, you'll feel okay. Once you achieve it, you'll rest. Once they finally see you, you'll stop hustling for proof that you matter. But you don't feel okay. You still don't feel whole. You still don't feel like you. And the reason is simple. You've tied your peace to things you don't control. You've made your serenity conditional. I'll be at peace when. I'll be okay when. And that when is a moving target. It never arrives. Because even if you get the thing, there's always a next thing. The desire doesn't stop. It just changes shape. This is what Epictetus meant when he talked about the proper management of desires and aversions. He said you should confine your desires entirely to what is within your power. If you desire externals, wealth, status, health, another person's affection, you make yourself a slave to things and people outside your control. Instead, you should desire only right conduct, only your own moral excellence, and you should reserve your aversion only for vice, for the things that actually corrupt you, not for inconvenience, not for discomfort, not for not getting your way. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. When you first hear this, it sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like someone who couldn't get what they wanted, so they decided wanting was the problem. Sour grapes, right? The slave who tells you not to want freedom. But that's not what's happening here. Epictetus wasn't telling you to stop acting. He wasn't telling you to stop building, stop working, stop engaging with the world. He was telling you to stop tying your peace to outcomes. There's a massive difference. Here's what nobody tells you about ambition. Ambition itself is not the problem. The problem is ambition with a noose around your neck. You can pursue a goal. You can work hard. You can strive for excellence. The Stoics were not lazy people. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire. He led armies. He made decisions that affected millions of lives. He was not sitting on a mountain telling everyone to stop trying, but he kept his peace separate from his outcomes. He pursued what was right, and he accepted what came. That's the discipline, not an action. Right action without attachment to the result. Think of it like this. You can plant a garden. You can water it. You can tend the soil. You can do everything right. But you cannot make it rain. You cannot control the frost. You cannot stop a pest from eating what you've grown. If your peace depends on the harvest, you will be anxious every single day. If your peace depends on the tending, you will sleep well regardless of what comes up from the ground. That's the difference. And it's the difference between a life of chronic anxiety and a life of quiet power. Now, let me take you deeper. Because there's a concept here that most people completely misunderstand. The Stoics didn't say that wealth, fame, and pleasure are bad. They didn't say you should live in poverty and avoid enjoyment. What they said is something more subtle and more dangerous to the way you currently live. They said these things are preferred indifference. Enjoy them when they're present. Don't need them when they're absent. Read that again in your mind. Enjoy them when they're present. Don't need them when they're absent. That's the whole game. The problem isn't that you enjoy things. The problem is that you need them. You've taken things that are nice to have and turned them into things you can't live without. And in that transformation, you've handed your peace to the world. You've said, I'm not okay unless the world delivers. And the world does not care about delivering. The world is not hostile. The world is indifferent. And that indifference will eat you alive if your peace depends on its cooperation. So here's where we get practical. Because I don't want to leave you with philosophy. I want to give you a tool, a daily practice, something you can actually use. Epictetus had what he called the discipline of desire. It was one of 3 core areas of training in his philosophy. And the discipline of desire is exactly what it sounds like. Training your desires, not killing them, training them, aligning them with the nature of things. And the way you do this is by becoming what I call a cost-analyst of your own peace. Here's how it works. Every day, or at least every week, you sit down and you make a list. Not of your goals, not of your tasks, of your desires, the things you want, the things you're attached to, the outcomes you're invested in. And next to each one, you write a number. Not a dollar amount. A peace cost. What is this desire costing you in serenity? Let's say you want a promotion at work. Okay, what does wanting that promotion cost you? Maybe it costs you sleep. Maybe it costs you presence with your family. Maybe it costs you your integrity because you find yourself performing for people you don't respect. Maybe it costs you the ability to enjoy your current life because you're always living in the future in the version of yourself that has the title and the salary. That's the peace cost. Now, you look at the other side. What value does the promotion actually bring you? Money, sure. Status, sure. Maybe some satisfaction. But is the value greater than the cost? Is what you gain in salary worth what you lose in serenity? Is what you gain in title worth what you lose in the ability to be present, to be yourself, to be at peace right now, in this moment, without needing anything to change? This is the cost analysis. And here's the thing that makes it so powerful. You're not asking whether to pursue the promotion. You're asking whether to be attached to it. You're asking whether your peace should be held hostage by it. You can still go after the promotion. You can still work hard. But if you've done the cost analysis honestly, you can pursue it without needing it. And that changes everything. Because when you don't need it, you perform better. You're more relaxed. You're more yourself. You make better decisions. And ironically, you're more likely to get it. But even if you don't, you're fine. Because your peace was never on the line. That's the Stoic cost analysis. And it applies to everything. Let's run through more examples. Because this needs to become a way of thinking, not just an exercise you do once. You want a certain person to like you. What does that cost you? It costs you authenticity. It costs you the freedom to be yourself because you're constantly calibrating around what you think they want. It costs you dignity. You start contorting. You start performing. You start shrinking parts of yourself that you think they won't like. And all of this for someone whose opinion you don't control, whose feelings can change on a Tuesday for no reason, whose affection is not yours to secure. What does it cost you in serenity to need someone's approval? Almost everything. And what does it give you? A fragile, conditional sense of being okay that lasts until they stop texting back. Cut it. Not the person, the need. Enjoy their company when it's present. Don't need it when it's absent. Be warm. Be open. Be present. But do not hand them your peace as a deposit. You want your body to look a certain way. What does that cost you? Maybe it costs you your relationship with food. Maybe it costs you hours of your life spent in a state of dissatisfaction with a body that is healthy and functional and alive. Maybe it costs you the ability to exist without judging yourself in every reflective surface. Maybe it costs you the simple joy of being in your own skin. And what does it give you? A feeling that you can lose in a week, that you've lost before, that you'll lose again, because bodies change and age and do what bodies do. This doesn't mean don't train. Don't eat well. Don't take care of yourself. It means stop tying your worth to the outcome. Train because it's good. Eat well because it's right. And let your peace be independent of what the mirror says on any given morning. You want certainty about the future. This is one of the most expensive desires you carry. You want to know that things will work out, that you'll be safe, that the decisions you're making now are the right ones, that you won't regret this in 5 years. What does wanting certainty cost you? It costs you the present. It costs you the ability to be here, now, because you're always mentally living in a future that doesn't exist yet, trying to control it from a distance. It costs you sleep. It costs you joy. It costs you the capacity to act with confidence. Because how can you act confidently when you're terrified the outcome might not match your plan? And what does certainty give you? Nothing. Because you can't have it. Certainty about the future is not available. It's not on the shelf. You can want it until you die and you will never, ever hold it. So the cost is everything and the value is zero. That's the worst deal you'll ever make. And you're making it every day. Cut it. Not the planning. Not the preparation. The need for certainty. Act. Prepare. And then let go. Trust your capacity to handle whatever comes. That's the only certainty that exists, and it's the one the Stoics pointed to. You can't guarantee the world. You can guarantee yourself. Now, I want to address something that's probably nagging at you. Because if you're really listening, there's a part of you that's thinking, this sounds like apathy. This sounds like giving up. Like lying down. Like telling yourself you don't care so you don't get hurt. And I want to be very clear about this, because the difference between Stoic detachment and apathy is the difference between a surgeon and a coward. Both are calm. One is calm because he's mastered himself. The other is calm because he's running away. Epictetus was not apathetic. He taught passionately. He engaged with the world. He trained athletes. He advised politicians. He lived fully. Marcus Aurelius was not apathetic. He governed. He fought. He mourned his children. He felt everything. The Stoic ideal was never to feel nothing. It was to feel everything and not be ruled by it. To experience desire and not be owned by it. To experience loss and not be destroyed by it. To experience joy and not be grasping at it as it passes. The Stoics called this state ataraxia, tranquility. And here's what's critical. Tranquility is not the absence of feeling. It's not numbness. It's not a flat line. Tranquility is what happens when your desires are in proper order. When you want only what you can guarantee, your own virtue, your own integrity, your own right action, and you reject only what is genuinely evil, which is vice, the corruption of your own character, nothing can disturb you. Not because you don't feel, because you've stopped putting your peace in the hands of things that were never going to hold it. Think about it this way. If you put your wallet on a table in a crowded room and it gets stolen, you'd be upset. But you'd also know you made a mistake. You put something valuable in an untrustworthy place. That's what you're doing with your peace every day. You're putting it in the hands of outcomes, of other people, of circumstances you can't control. And then you're surprised when it gets taken. The Stoics are telling you to put your peace somewhere safe. In your own character. In your own choices. In the one vault that no one can crack. Now, I want to take you through the actual daily practice. Because this needs to become something you live, not something you agree with intellectually. Agreeing with philosophy is useless. Living it is everything. Step 1. Morning inventory. Before your day starts, before the phone, before the notifications, before the low-grade anxiety kicks in, you sit for 1 minute. 1 minute. And you ask yourself, what am I wanting today that I don't control? What am I attached to right now? What outcome am I secretly depending on to feel okay? You don't need to write it down every time. You just need to ask. Because the act of asking brings the desire into the light. And desires that live in the light lose half their power. The ones that control you are the ones you haven't looked at directly. Step 2. The pause. Throughout your day, when you feel that tightening in your chest, that low-grade anxiety, that pull towards something you can't have or can't control, you pause. You don't suppress it. You don't pretend it's not there. You pause and you ask the cost question. What is this costing me right now? Not what is this about? What is it costing me? Because anxiety is always about something, but peace is always about cost. And the moment you see the cost, you have a choice. You can keep paying or you can release. That's the pause. That's where your power lives. In the space between the desire and the reaction. Step 3. Evening audit. At the end of the day, you look back. Where did I hand my peace away today? Where did I let an outcome I don't control determine whether I was okay? Where did I let someone else's opinion or a delayed result or an unmet expectation tax my serenity? And you don't judge yourself. You just see. Because seeing is the practice. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be conscious. A conscious person who still gets anxious is infinitely more powerful than an unconscious person who thinks they're calm. Step 4. The cut. When you identify a desire whose price in peace exceeds its value, you cut it. Not dramatically, not with a ceremony. You simply release the attachment. You say to yourself, I can pursue this. I can work toward this. But I will not need this. My peace does not depend on this. And you mean it. And when the desire rises again, because it will, because desires are persistent, you remind yourself of the cost. You remind yourself that you've already done the math. And the math says it's not worth it. Now, here's something important. This practice is not a one-time event. It's not a course you complete. It's a way of being. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus called it the discipline of desire because it requires discipline. It requires repetition. It requires returning to the same principle over and over, not because you're too stupid to get it the first time, but because the pull of attachment is constant. The world is constantly telling you to want more, need more, be more, have more. And you are constantly being invited to hand your peace over in exchange for the promise that more will finally be enough. It won't be. More is not enough. More is just more. And the desire for more is a fire that feeds on its own smoke. You don't put it out by giving it more fuel. You put it out by understanding that the fire itself is the problem. Let me say something now that might be hard to hear, because I think you need to hear it. You are not behind. You are not failing because you haven't achieved what you thought you'd achieve by now. You are not broken because you still feel restless. You are restless because you're carrying desires you never chose. Desires you inherited from your parents, from your culture, from the algorithm, from a version of yourself that was younger and more frightened and thought that if he could just get enough, he'd finally be safe. You're not that person anymore. And those desires are not yours. They're ghosts. And ghosts only have power when you don't know they're there. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Not after you finish this video and move on to the next thing. Right now, think of one thing you want that you don't control. One attachment that's been quietly taxing your peace. It could be something small. It could be something enormous. Just one. And ask yourself, what is this costing me? What would my life feel like if I released the need for this and kept only the action? If I could pursue it without being owned by it? If I could want it lightly? Hold it in an open hand instead of a clenched fist? That's the feeling. That's the freedom Epictetus was talking about. Not the absence of desire. The presence of choice. The ability to want without being wanted. To pursue without being pursued. To live fully in the world without giving the world a claim on your peace. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing the thing, you become more capable of getting it. Because you stop being desperate. You stop being anxious. You stop leaking energy into worry about outcomes you can't control. And all that energy comes back to you. And you use it, not to chase, to build, not to prove, to become, not to acquire, to be. That's the Stoic secret. Not that you stop wanting, that you stop needing. And in the space between wanting and needing, you find something most people never find. You find yourself whole, quiet, already enough. Not because you've achieved everything on the list, but because you've finally stopped letting the list define you. Let me bring this back to where we started. Everything you want is taxing your peace. Every desire carries a price. And the question is not whether you pay. You will always pay something. The question is whether you're paying consciously, whether you've looked at the invoice, whether you've decided, with clear eyes, that what you're getting is worth what you're losing. Most people never look at the invoice. They just pay. Every day. For years. For decades. They pay with their sleep. They pay with their presence. They pay with their joy. They pay with the quiet, unshakable feeling of being okay that they were born knowing and have been slowly losing since the day the world told them they needed more. You don't need more. You need less. Not less in your life. Less in your wanting. Less attachment. Less of your peace held hostage by things that were never going to stay. And in that less, you'll find something that no amount of more has ever delivered. Tranquility. Not the kind that comes from avoiding difficulty. The kind that comes from having your desires in proper order. The kind that survives loss. The kind that survives delay. The kind that survives the world being exactly what it is, indifferent and beautiful and completely unconcerned with your plans. Epictetus knew this. He lived it. A slave who became free in the only way that matters. Not by changing his circumstances, but by changing his relationship to them. He didn't stop living. He didn't stop teaching. He didn't stop engaging. He just stopped handing his peace to things that couldn't be trusted to hold it. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Not to withdraw from life. To engage with it more fully, more honestly, more freely, without the weight of 1,000 desires you never chose, pulling you in directions you don't want to go. Become the cost analyst of your own peace. Audit your desires. Cut the ones that cost too much. Keep the ones that serve you. And for everything else, hold it lightly. Enjoy it when it's present. Let it go when it's absent. Not because you don't care, because you finally understand what your peace is worth. And it's worth more than anything you want. Remember that. Carry it with you. Not as a quote, not as a philosophy, as a practice, as something you do every day in the space between the desire and the reaction. In that space, you are free. In that space, you are whole. In that space, you are, for the first time in a long time, yourself. Stay disciplined. Choose peace over want. And let the world be what it is while you become what you're meant to be.